in every person's experience. Now what you could do then, when there's this fear, to remember everyone is Buddha nature. Everyone has this incredible mind. So whatever suffering there is, instead of fear, to try and generate the courage. I'll do something. I'll help them myself. I'll do something about their suffering. So when it depresses you, seeing others suffering. So instead of dwelling on the suffering, rather to go, I myself do something. It is not always going to be there. The suffering is temporary because it's not in the nature of the mind. It seems very permanent. That is our misperception of permanence. We have an innate sense. Even when we get sick, it's very interesting. When you look at your own sickness, you get a cold and you get depressed because there's a sense it's going to be like that forever. You may feel better in 5 hours, but in that moment there's a sense, oh, it's going to be like that. So that is also there when we look at the sufferings of others. One day at a time, and it continues changing. And the one good thing about suffering is that negative karma of the past goes. So that's the Buddhist idea, of course, the idea that negative actions in the past accumulated, I don't know, maybe millions of years ago, they may ripen right now. And when they do, they're gone. The suffering is gone. And that type of suffering you can never experience again. So if you have fear yourself in terms of that could happen to me, well then again, okay. But if it's true that the causes, and of course without the idea of karma it becomes a little incomplete, but I can create the causes and conditions for that not to happen to me if I'm scared myself. So what do I need to do? There's so many amazing ways in eliminating negative actions of the past, purifying them, and instead replacing them with positive actions. So it's all in our own hand in a way. So every time we help someone, every time we're there for someone, every time we are kind, every time we make an effort, that purifies negativities. So regret is also a good antidote. So even if we don't remember what we've done, just a sense of, I regret if I've ever harmed someone. Not guilt, but regret. So you could do this, every evening or early in the morning. If I've ever harmed someone, I didn't intend to, I'm sorry for that, whatever I've done. So just regret already lessens the action. And then to think, whatever positive action I do throughout the day, may it eliminate the negativity, the residue of the negativity I've left. So that's said to be very powerful. So it's very empowering in a way. Yeah. Yes, I truly believe that. And then, even when horrible things happen to us, the thing is, again, we can learn to deal with them. We can actually learn to use suffering in an effective way. We can transform suffering, actually. So what is so sad when people can't do that? But we can learn to, first of all, try and do this ourselves, and then maybe help others to do the same. Because a suffering, like a disease, of course, if we don't need to experience, that is best. But even the disease, okay, like Alan spoke about this acceptance. So when a problem arises, to accept that this is a problem, and to maybe take this as a means to generate more compassion. Oh, so this is what it feels like. This is what other people go through when they suffer. Oh, may they be free from their suffering. Right? To use it that way. There are other practices that are more advanced. Tonglen. You could imagine that, oh, my suffering could mean someone else. I take the suffering of others. So I experience it for others. Yeah, bring it on. Make it stronger. So maybe someone else suffers less. Now you're just imagining it. It doesn't actually happen, but it gives you strength and determination and even joy. So there's so many ways of accepting it and growing stronger in that way. So not to fear suffering. I mean, to fear suffering, I'd say the fear is worse than the actual problem. Yeah.
My fear is, it's not about it will happen to me.
Yeah.
It's that I cannot stand about so much suffering and it's too pain for me, and
It's too painful, you can't think about it. But actually all you do is...
Doing to me, wow.
But actually, there's not a single person who experiences all that suffering. Only you. At that moment. You see, what we do is we take the summary of all the suffering and go, oh, it's so much. But there's not a single person who experienced. You know, there's one person who experienced a toothache, another person a headache, and a certain person a loss of someone. So first of all, when we think of all this suffering, we kind of imagine it's there and it's overwhelming. But that's... It's not like it's like this person, this. And the good thing is, like I said earlier on, suffering arises, it seems unbearable, and then we continue. And then we get up again, right? We get up again. So it's not like it's some cloud of suffering. This is what our mind does. Our mind is very good at creating solidity. It creates something solid, something... You see, like I give you an example, another example. Let's say someone says something to you. I really like that example because I know from my own experience. We say, sticks and stones can break my bones, but words can do no harm. I don't think so. I think sometimes sticks and stones are not as bad as the words of someone. They can be very hurtful. But actually, we make them hurtful. We're so good at making them hurtful. Okay, let me give you an example. Someone says, Kelsang Wangmo, you are a horrible person. Well, that wouldn't actually hurt me that much. What would hurt me, really? Actually, I think you really... I don't know what would hurt me, but something, you know, like really, like, I think you're just a fake, or you're just, I don't know, something like really hurtful. I can't think of something that's... But I'm sure we all have, you know, something... And they say these words. And initially, I go like, yeah. And then I start thinking about it. Oh, they say, Kelsang Wangmo, you suck, or something, right? To keep it short. Kelsang Wangmo, you suck. And in my mind, those words take on their own reality. Like, it's like these words, I think they're negative. Those are negative words from this person. I've helped them. I've been kind to them. That makes it worse, right? I've been really helping them. I've tried to help them. But this is how they repay me. And they say this. So slowly these words grow into a dark cloud. It's almost like they grow bigger and bigger and bigger. They were just words. You know, you suck. Few words, just sounds. The moment they were spoken, they were gone. The motivation of the other person doesn't harm me. It's their motivation, right? I mean, they said them, maybe they were angry with me, but if I really suck, well, thank you for telling me. You know, that this is the opportunity for me to make some changes, because if no one ever tells me, how can I change? I may not be aware of it. If I don't suck, well, it doesn't matter they say so. It doesn't make me, you know. So you see, we're not realistic. First of all, why did they say that? If I take it realistically, why did they say that? Maybe they didn't say it to me. Maybe they said it to someone else. It's a possibility. But okay, they said it to me. Well, because they had a crappy day. I've done something intentionally or unintentionally, or didn't do anything. No matter what it is, in the end, it doesn't harm me. Because if it's true, it's wonderful, they're honest. I'd be sucking the whole time and no one ever tells me. Right? As a fault that everyone else, and if this person perceives it, other people perceive it too. I'm just the only one who's ignorant about it, who denies it. So it's a great opportunity. And if it's not true, it's okay. So if you think about this, it's like in our mind, we turn it into something negative, and it becomes so big, and it becomes so terrible, and we say it's negative, and then it seems to take on a life on its own, a negativity that we carry with us. Right? There's so much unnecessary suffering. So we do the same with everything. We see something positive, and it takes on a life on its own. It's not like we label it positive, and that's it. We label it negative, and that's it. It's just a label. It's just what we call it. But we then start believing in some negativity from its own side, as if the object in and of itself was negative, right? So the same is true for suffering. It seems to be solid and like the suffering of all sentient beings, like a cloud. How's that possible? There's my suffering and yours and yours and yours and yours, and there's not a single person who experiences all of them. Everyone, and it comes and goes, and sometimes it's better, and then there are worse days. And the good thing is, one day we'll be free from the suffering. So really, we don't see suffering as it really is. It's just an emotion that comes and goes, comes and goes. It's impermanent. And the good thing is it can be removed. And I could work towards removing my own suffering and showing others how to do it. So it's a bit like a doctor. You know, when you want to become a doctor and you think of all the diseases out there are in this world. What are you going to do? Oh, it's so depressing. All these headaches. All the headaches in this world. Well, no one experiences all the headaches in this world, so no worry. Right? All the different kind of diseases. There's not a single person who experiences all those. So instead of becoming depressed about all the different diseases, to think, okay, they're diseases, but they have causes. And if I can learn how to treat people by showing them how to remove the causes, how wonderful. Right? So like a doctor would do that. You first have to become aware of all the diseases. But doctors are not terribly depressed. Have you ever met a medical student who's terribly depressed about all the diseases in this world? I don't think so, right? I mean, you could very well become very depressed about all the diseases in this world. But we see it like, no, I have the opportunity. I myself will do something. I'll become a doctor. I cannot remove the suffering of beings. Of course not. I can show people how to treat themselves. Right? By living myself as an example. You know, don't become a smoking doctor. Don't become a fast food eating doctor. Like, be an example, the way you live your life. And also find the methods to get... So that's exactly what this is all about. So compassion means the wish to... You focus on other people's suffering to see everyone is the same. Everyone is the same. We all suffer. All living beings suffer. So right now, my main concern is my suffering and no one else's. I'm only concerned with my own suffering. Okay? So first I recognize my own limited situation. Okay, I have problems, I have difficulties, plus I'm limited. Even the happiness I experience right now is pretty limited. We'll come to this. And then once I've done that with myself, now I change the focus. Now I focus on others. And I look around. Oh, in the same way as myself, others are in this situation. And then it's not just about I, me, and my happiness all the time. It's about others' happiness in the same way. When I meet someone, oh, I hope this person is happy. I hope, you know, it's not about, oh, I hope they like me, or I hope they think I'm great, or I hope... No. Slowly it's like, how are they? Are they okay? And when you talk to them, they can actually pick up on that. You're sincerely concerned for them. I mean, people, they're not stupid, right? I mean, if I'm very self-centered, there's this very good song, I think it's by Bob Marley. You can fool some people sometimes, but you can't fool all the people all the time, right? We may pretend, we may be very good at pretending, but when someone gets to know us, they feel where we're coming from. And it's very... For anyone, it's wonderful to be around someone who's sincere, who sincerely cares for us. So I believe there is a way in which we can take it lightheartedly, understand suffering for what it really is. It is impermanent, it is ever-changing, and we can do something about it. So instead of depressing you, instead of pulling you down, to generate courage. Okay, people are suffering, but I'm ready. I'm so lucky. I am so lucky to be in this position right now. There's so much I can do. All right, I'm not wasting it. I may die one day, but that's another reason to not waste it. So His Holiness, I'm not sure in this book, maybe not, but in other books he speaks about this, or in teachings. Compassion should bring forth strength and determination. I'll do something. I can do things. I can do very little right now, but I can make my mind transform such that I have more space for others. Can you see how this can be transformed? So don't allow it to be like a dark cloud. That's just a creation of the mind. There is no dark cloud, heavy suffering. That's just a creation of the mind. Yeah? And to recognize that our mind creates it into something solid, intrinsic, kind of permanent. That's just an illusion. It's not what's actually there. Okay? So I'm glad you brought it up. It's a common problem that people feel depressed about suffering, about seeing. No, instead it should give us courage. Okay, there's so much problem. There are so many problems around. My problems are secondary. My problems are trivial in comparison to the problem. So I should work on my own problem, but more important, work on others' problems. So we are already the second part of the book here. Right? So this sense of determination, the sense of... So previously I only spoke about I, me and mine all the time. Well, because we need to start from I, me and mine, but we take it from there. Take it further. Right? Take it to a different level. Yes?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
But what you say now, it's really confused me, because then
Which part is confusing?
that I agree with you that my suffering is not more important than
Other
the
suffering.
other suffering,
Yeah.
but then I don't know how
To deal with it?
no, it's
So other suffering is more important, so it's worse than my own, so it's depressing. Is that what you say?
no, it's not depressing. It's that I forgot myself, and then I forgot myself, and
You don't forget yourself. If you forget yourself, you won't eat well, and you won't be able to work for others. You need to look after yourself.
But it's the point. It's too much hard to me that
How to balance it out. Ah, okay, you're very calm. Don't worry, it's a calm problem. How to balance it. How to be balanced, right? Oh, right. So I should look after... The whole thing is the motivation. Like a mother. Okay, mother is a great example. If you have 10 children and you sincerely put your children before yourself, putting your children before yourself, very noble. But that is your altruism. What about wisdom? Okay, wisdom and altruism both. Now, if you're a mother who wants to be beneficial to her children, short-term and long-term, if you burn yourself out, how long-term is that going to be? If you lie there, can't move any longer, my husband should take over, right? So that's not skill. You need to sleep and eat organic food and do yoga, not like me, do yoga every day, whatever you need to do to keep healthy and strong. So, because then your motivation is to keep this body healthy and strong, so you have greater benefit to yourself and others. Don't ignore your own wishes. Who is more important, yourself or others? Same. Because if you say others are more important, that doesn't make sense, because then from my perspective, if from your perspective I'm more important, and from my perspective you are more important, that makes us equally important.
But if I want to practice that, not to,
yeah,
I want to.
Yeah. So usually it's like I, me, and mine. I'm more important. Now we want to go this way, and so we may think this is acceptable as part of the Buddhist practice. You even though that's not realistic, you know it's not, but it serves a specific purpose to think others are more important, just to balance it out. You know, we've gone from one extreme to go to another extreme. But even if others are more important, and a mother, I think many mothers, at some point at least, would put their children before. I mean, how many cases of mothers who saved their children's life, when it comes down to it, you know, you would hug your child in order to not to be shot. Okay? There may be times when you kind of sneak the bigger piece of cake, you know. I watch my sister, she sometimes does that with her children. She takes the bigger piece. She likes that cake, she takes the bigger piece. She sometimes does that. But when it comes down to it, she would give her life for her children. So she may not give them the bigger piece of cake, but she gives them her life. I know, for sure. And there's so many examples where mothers, when it comes down to it, they protected their children. So you put your life before your children, and still you do it with wisdom. In the sense, okay, in that moment you've given your life, okay, to save the child's life. But most of the time we try to keep healthy. I mean, how are you going to benefit others if you're not healthy? Okay? I mean, if you want to really work for other sentient beings, you need to be healthy and strong and energetic. So with the motivation, okay, what kind of body do I need to be able to help others, not just in the short term, also in the long term? With that in mind, you make a decision about yoga or not. Not like me. Right? Does that make sense? Does that make sense? So we need to look after ourselves. When you look at the Dalai Lama, he goes to the hospital all the time to make sure he's strong and healthy, right? He keeps healthy, but I'm very, very sure he does it to be around long enough because people ask him all the time, please stay longer. Just recently when he cancelled all these teachings, wow, it's very touching. He cancelled all these teachings, so there was this rumor going around, His Holiness is really not well. That wasn't true. It was for a different reason. He cancelled them, as I heard from someone who works in a private office. Never mind. So, but then His Holiness, that people thought His Holiness was really sick, and they interviewed these Tibetans on the street. It was heart-wrenching. His Holiness went to to Britain, to England, and first of all he said to the Tibetans, don't worry, there was like a meeting with the Tibetans, it was on the Tibetan radio, so don't worry, I'm really well, the doctor tells me I'll live another 10 or 20 years, everyone's clapping, everyone very happy. And then they interviewed Tibetans on the street, and then they asked, are you concerned about His Holiness's health? And they all cried. They were talking like, yeah, I'm a little bit concerned. They were all crying. It was so touching. So Tibetans are so worried about His Holiness. Unbelievable. His Holiness catches a cold, the whole country becomes depressed. I mean, all the Tibetans get very worried. It's an amazing love and concern they have for His Holiness. So His Holiness is always telling them, I keep healthy, I eat really healthy, don't you worry, I keep really well, and I believe that. And people are like, oh, thank you so much. Thank you very much. His Holiness is keeping healthy. So, yeah. Anyway, so this is kind of the attitude. His Holiness does it for others. So that's the kind of attitude. His Holiness is an example for us to work for others, to be there for others. And I'm sure if you look in the Jewish tradition, I'm sure there are some very altruistic rabbis. And I'm sure they keep very healthy. Right? With wisdom to keep healthy. So to keep healthy, so they're there for the benefit of others. Does that make sense? So it's nothing depressing, really. It's nothing that should have depressed, because depression is not a helpful state. So depression can be overcome with wisdom. If we see suffering for what it is, we cannot be depressed. If we see suffering for what it is, there's nothing to be scared of. Right? So we need to look at it. It's impermanent, it's ever-changing. There is no overarching. And instead, yes, there's suffering. So I'm needed. Good, there's my challenge. I can do something. Like a doctor, it's like, what would a doctor feel like when there are no sick people? Right? It's almost like, there are sick people? Okay, now my life has meaning. Wonderful. What would be you learn to be a psychiatrist or a psychologist, and now there are people that you can help. How wonderful. Not saying like, oh, I wish there were more. I'm not saying that. But there's really like, it's instead of saying, oh, how depressing. So many people are, oh, wonderful. I did all this training. Now I can help. Yeah, so instead, we need to find a way to transform it, instead of fear and depression, to transform it into, I can do something. What a wonderful opportunity. I can use this precious opportunity in such a meaningful way. Am I making sense? Mm-hmm. I'm jumping a few topics here, to be honest. Mm-hmm. Right? Never mind. It's not necessary that we go through each word. But I wanted to give you the sense of why this idea of precious human rebirth. See how fortunate we are, and to utilize it in a way to be there for others. And to know we could lose it any time. Death. And you see why is death so important to think about it? Because the trivial things, there's so much in life that's not important. And we worry so much about it. And we spend so much time. It's like the paint in my living room is not the right kind of green that I wanted it. I mean, I can obsess about those things. Fortunately, I don't have a living room. But I can obsess about little things, and then I go, oh, wait a minute. If I die tomorrow, it doesn't matter what paint it is. Sometimes, we have certain expectations in our mind, and we don't get it, and we can obsess about it for hours. I mean, that energy could be spent in a different way. So then to remind ourselves of our own death can be very effective. What if I die tomorrow? So also when we worry, that the main thing is like when we're upset about something, someone does something to us, to just think, okay, if I were to die tomorrow, would it still be important? And then it puts things into perspective. Right? So those two topics, just to be able to go back to the text, of course, but to see that these topics are very beneficial. So if you read through it here, when you read through these topics, Precious Human Rebirth. Let me just find it. Okay, so recognizing our fortunate situation. So it says, for example, Tsongkhapa says, why would I waste this attainment of such a good life when I act as though it is insignificant? I deceive myself. What could be more foolish than this? Yeah? So we all have, not just being human, but also having the freedoms and the opportunities we have. Just the fact we're interested in not just making money, 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 and having power and having, I mean, how terrible those people, and we should also feel how terrible it is to be only concerned with fame. Sometimes we look at famous people, some of the famous people, so obsessed with fame. So not just looking at people, even the fortunate ones, we may look at these glossy magazines and go, oh, if I were just like Rita? No more singer? Singer? Yeah? No, okay, no anymore. Who's famous right now as a singer?
It's always better to choose an American.
An American singer, really?
Adele.
Adele. Right? Adele. Right? Okay, Adele. I mean, one day, so the fame is so easy to become attached to fame. And then one day you're no longer famous. No one listens to your music. You're out. You're gone. So there's such a strong, I don't know how attached she is, but let's assume she baby, there's a possibility. How terrible to need that to be happy. Because it's very transient. It's so unreliable. One day they like you and the next day they don't. Right? So anyway, to think along these lines that we are so fortunate that we are concerned about, it's not just about having a healthy body and mind and certain freedoms, but we're not obsessed with things that are so unimportant. That in itself is very valuable. And to continue working on that. Because it's easy to fall back into it. Okay. Anyway, so this is what Tonglen speaks about here. If we lacked, for example, all the senses, it would be much more difficult to practice. If we were blind, it would be difficult to read books. If we were deaf, we could not listen to lectures. So it would just be more difficult. Not saying that it's impossible, but right now we don't lack any of those. We don't have any of those restrictions. And again, another reason to work hard to, utilize our opportunities. So it talks about the rarity of this opportunity. It is rare. If we look around in this world, how many people, if you tell them about meditation and transforming your mind, how many people go, right? Yeah? I mean, in Israel, I think it's not as bad, but Germany's pretty bad. Really, it's really pretty bad. But in Germany, Buddhism is not doing very well in Germany as a result of the Second World War. Because they're very suspicious of someone dressing in the same way. Hierarchy. Everyone have to wear a certain dress. It reminds them of Hitler when everyone had to go. So hierarchy, not a good idea. So actually the Second World War, what happened in Germany, makes it more difficult with Buddhism. Following some person, following someone like the Dalai Lama, whoa, that's weird. They're very suspicious of someone following someone and bowing down to someone. Very scared of that. I mean, like some of my associates from before, before I became a nun, they'd be like, "Why do you have to dress like that? Do you have to dress like that? There's something weird." Like they kept saying that to me, like, "Ooh, this is scary." So,
It's the same here.
Pardon?
I think it's the same here.
No, but look how many people are interested in Dharma. You never have a hall like that, and Germany has 80 million people. Come on. It's very different. Seriously, there's one FBMT center in Germany. It's not doing very well. So, I mean, I'm not saying it's not popular, but it's quite different to Israel. Quite different, trust me. Anyway, so, the point is, what is my point? How did I get there? Help me, how did I get to Israel and Dharma?
Hierarchy. That we're not attached
The
to
rarity.
how rarities.
How rare it is, how rare. It started with the rarity. How rare it is in this world. How many people are really interested? Yeah, I mean, I don't talk about what I do with people. I mean, how can I talk about it? People just go, "Oh my God," If I walk like this in the street in Germany, I do not look up. I don't want to see people's faces. In Israel, it's actually really lovely. When I go to the supermarket, either they say, "Namaste." There's always someone going, telling someone namaste. Or they're very friendly, I mean, very sweet. Just the supermarket next door, you know, everyone's trying to help me. They take the money out of my hand, assuming I don't know what the shekel is, which is true. I never know what is a shekel and what is a half one. So very sweet. It doesn't happen to me in Germany. Seriously. People go like, ooh. Right? So it's kind of, yeah. So I'm saying, maybe it also helps that I know I'm not Israeli, so it would be worse if they thought I was Israeli. I don't know. It's just an outsider, that's okay. You know, in Germany, I'm so obviously German, and they're like, oh my God. But people really give me dirty looks sometimes. I mean, they're like, oh, you know, they're embarrassed or whatever. So, yeah, so there's just no understanding. They think I'm just totally crazy. So they associate this with something being crazy. So how can you ever, you know, look into something like that that allows you to transform your mind, maybe make some changes, if right from the beginning you think it's just some crazy cult? It's already a huge obstacle. So I'm saying it is rare. There are not many people who are interested in this world to do something here. It's rare. Okay? So another reason. This is so weird to hear a bell of a church. That reminds me like a bell.
Monastery here.
Monastery here.
Reminds me, it's the same bell that we have in our village. It's like,
Big
okay. Anyway. All right. So what I'm saying is, well, I've actually said all this, so you can read through this again. Make this. So Atisha, for example, says, since this body of complete leisure and opportunity was very difficult to get, and once obtained will be very difficult to have again, make it meaningful by striving at practice. Okay? All right. So if there's past and future life, blah, blah, the whole thing, it was difficult to get it, and it will be hard to get it again. So better to accumulate the causes for having such opportunities again. You should think, day and night, I will make good use of this body of mine, which is a home of illness, a basis for the suffering of old age, and lacks a core. So on one hand, of course, it is limited, it has limitations, and we should be aware of them, but still it is precious from another perspective. Okay. So using the altruistic, generating unconditional love, to understand that all sentient beings possess the foundation for becoming enlightened, so to do something ourselves, to help others. All right. And then knowing you will die. Next topic. So knowing it won't last. Okay, so the different things to think about. So the disadvantages of not remembering death will be, one will not want to practice, one will not want to transform one's mind, to make an effort to improve the mind and to remove some of our limitations. And even if we do want to practice, we postpone it. We're very good at procrastinating. Yeah, I'll start practicing tomorrow. I'll do it. I'll do some other time. Right now I'm a little busy. Well, we don't know whether we'll die tomorrow, so better start today. Yeah, it's a good reason to not postpone. So even if we try to practice will not become pure without the thought in mind that I don't know how long I have this opportunity. So it makes it purer. The more I have a sense, I don't know how long I have this life, the purer will be our effort to really transform the mind. We may lose our determination to really practice and eventually drop it altogether. And we will not be concerned about negativities we do. We harm others, so, you know, whatever negativity I do, I'll make it up one day. Right? It's a bit like similar situation, and this is a worldly example. Boaz, you know Boaz?
Oh,
Boaz, yeah.
Teacher.
He's your teacher. Oh, very good. So Boaz, the other day we had a talk about this course he did. He did a course, he does a course on dying. So there's like a course, I don't know all the details, but the way he described it, he said, you visualize you have 1 year to live. This is part of the course. So I think one of the initial teachings he gave during one of the first courses, he said, he told people, imagine you're dying now. These are your last minutes. And people were like, no, no, it's impossible. I forget to leave the key with someone. I have unfinished business. And one person said, I wasn't nice to my husband. I wasn't nice to my husband. I cannot have my husband have them remember that last thing. So that's a very good reason to always be kind to our parents, to our children, Because maybe they're dead. And do we want to die with this regret? To separate from them and thinking, oh God, the last thing I said was you suck or something, right? That's another reason just to be careful, in the sense that not just accumulating non-virtue, that this is negative and it may have consequences in the future, but also we don't know whether this is the last time we meet our partner, the last time we meet our parents, even our children, how terrible it is, but there's no guarantee that they don't die before us if we have children, right? So to always be sure to not act out of anger, not out of resentment, because if we never meet them again, we regret it until we die. It's another good reason. So this is not really just Buddhism, negative action, you don't know how, but it's true in everyday life. Okay? So to never part on negative terms, because we don't know whether we meet again. And also at the time of death, if we don't take into mind death, we have great regret. We always regret something. If we always think, oh, I may die tomorrow, we make sure this regret doesn't arise. So like this idea, I won't say anything upon parting because it could be the last time we meet them. Okay? Now this is for me very real when I go to Germany, because every year I go, I don't know whether I see my parents again, of course. But this is true not just at that time. I know there's a year in between, or at least 10 months in between, before I see my family again. But it seems more likely that something happens, which is true, but actually every time we part, we don't know it's the last time. So in particular with our parents. Okay. All right, so those were just a few thoughts that I usually mention, some of the disadvantages. And then the opposite is true for the advantages, so it's just the opposite of that. And then there are these different reasons for why we can die. Death is certain. There's so many causes for death. Okay? So first of all, death is certain, and then there are 3 subdivisions. So 9-round death meditation. Death is certain. And then there's so many causes that may kill us. And lastly, it's really just what our mind, that's the only thing we take with us. So if you ask what dies, what does it mean to die? It means the consciousness leaves the body. That's death. From a Buddhist point of view, consciousness leaves the body. So how does that fit with modern science? Well, near-death experience of people who left their body. And so from a Buddhist point of view, it is possible that the mind exists without the brain. And fortunately, there are cases now. I've mentioned this when I was in Psychodharma in that group, but I mentioned it here too. There's a program on the BBC called Beyond Belief. It's a podcast. It's a podcast called Beyond Belief. And they have very interesting programs, and they keep all the programs. They don't delete them, so you can download them at any time. So there's one I can recommend you, called Mindfulness, by the way. And another one, it's called Near-Death Experiences. So they interview people who had near-death experiences. And one guy, he had an accident, apparently, and while he was lying there, his consciousness went above, and he saw the 2 workers of the ambulance, the 2 doctors, I guess, trying to save his life. And he knew exactly what they were doing. He was very concerned with his body, so he was focused on that, but he also knew what they had done. So, but he had no brain activity because he was dead in that moment. So his brain wasn't there, but mentally he was able to perceive what happened exactly in that moment. And later on he was able to recognize the 2 doctors when he came back. When he came back, he knew those were the 2 guys who helped him. And I don't remember all the details, but I seem to remember that he was able to tell them what they had done because he watched them. So there are many cases like that. You can read these case studies. I believe there's also a woman. She said there was a woman who did that near-death experience in an intensive care unit, and they had this idea of putting things on high objects, like I don't know, maybe like a little object that was very obvious, to put it on a cupboard, that if someone had a near-death experience, they could ask them, did you see the little doggy on the right, to kind of check with them. And I forget all the details, but she said most people said, like, I was so concerned about my body that I had no wish to look around. But there was at least one case, I believe. She said there were, not in all cases people had the same experiences. It just depends on the person, I guess. But she said something about 2 cases, in particular one case, I need to listen to it again, where the person was very clearly able to identify certain things. So the problem is you really just focus on your body. My body, what's happening to my body? So you don't have time to look around on cupboards and notice what's lying on them. But this case in particular with the ambulance, that really struck me because he was able to, like I said, recognize the people who helped him and was able to recollect how they had worked on him. So my point is here that he was dead in that moment, I guess, because the consciousness had left the body. Yeah, the consciousness had left the body. And many people who have near-death experience talk about leaving the room, there'll be another person, the white light and all that. And a very blissful experience, which can take away the fear of death. Some people didn't want to come back. Oh, he didn't want to come back. He was like, I want to stay in this state. I don't want to go back, I think. And then someone was like, no, you need to go back. He's like, I don't want to go back. And someone was like, no, your time is not over or something. And then you went back. Anyway, so they do talk about seeing a person, an angel or some living beings. But from a Buddhist point of view, there's no acceptance of a creator God, but God exists, no problem. That there's God, there's celestial beings, no problem. And that they assist us and help us, no problem. Right? I mean, Buddhas can manifest in different forms. All that is part of it. So that's not contradictory. But the point is that when the consciousness leaves the body, that's what we call death. When they separate. Yeah. So actually, well, if they separate for good, so near-death experience, it's almost like, not because it went back, but it was almost there. Almost like a total separation. So that's what we call death, leaving the body. Okay? Leaving the body behind. Okay. And so, therefore, if the only thing we take with us is our mind, well, that's important. Therefore, it's important to take care of our mind. More important than to take care of our body. Okay. So, time of death is not certain. There are lots of causes that give rise to our death, and the only thing that really helps us is what we did with our mind, because that's all we take with us. So I love this saying from the sutra. The Buddha himself said, the king leaves behind his kingdom, the beggar leaves behind his staff, his stick. Which means what? No matter what, we leave behind everything, whether it's just a stick. If all you own is a stick, well, that's what you leave behind. If you own an entire country, that's what you equally leave behind. So at the time of death, it doesn't matter how much money you accumulated. You can't even take with you 1 cent. Not 1 cent, 1 shekel you can't take with you. So all this money we accumulate, right? It helps us only until the time of death. But the way we accumulate it is as if we're going to live forever, ever. Oftentimes you have so much money in the bank, we never spend it, right? We never even... So therefore it's recommended that you should always have a will. So then you don't worry. Have a will, have everything ready, right? Make a will. If I die, even unexpectedly, then you don't worry. Oh, it's all taken care of. If you're in an accident, you know you're dying. I mean, I remember there was one boy at our school. He was a young boy. He was playing cricket on the roof where there's now a prayer hall, but before they were about to build it. He was playing cricket. He ran backwards. He fell down. He fell on his head. He knew he was dying, and he died. There's no hospital that can take care of this. It takes 6 hours to get to the next city. They put him in a car, and I believe, and I'm not sure, but I'm pretty sure he knew he was dying, and he died in the car. In that moment, like imagine you have an accident, you fall on your head, and you know there's nothing, you have only a few moments left. That's terrible. If your things are in order, you know, okay, I've made arrangements, everything is taken care of, you know, and there's no regret, and you can focus on having a peaceful death. Okay? So therefore it's good either give your money away before, or give it away to such a way like you make a will and you know it goes to the places you want it to go. So there's no squabbling over the money and your possessions. I think that's very important. Yeah. So it's like, okay, you've already given it up. You've already given it. It's like it gives you a sense, oh, I have nothing to hold on to. It's all gone. You've taken care of your affairs. That's seen as very important, so you can die a peaceful death. It's part of the preparation. And we do this when we're older, but we should do it now, anytime. I remember there was a nun once who died in Dharamsala. She unexpectedly, a Western nun, died. And they were like, oh my God, it was so difficult to go through her stuff. They didn't know what was what. And it's not easy if you die in India, because the police comes. It's like, you know, and you can't be shipped back in a box. In India, you can't. It's against